we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Do we want to introduce people from the public, or just
I think most of them have items.
you guys? Everyone is on the agenda, so we'll introduce you guys as we get to your agenda item. Nothing that's not on the agenda, I guess. So we'll go to.
Maybe ask for sure.
Or is there anything that's not on the agenda that you'd like to bring up? Anybody in the audience? Okay. Then we will consider the minutes from our last meeting.
So not exactly on the minutes, but I did notice on the agenda, it still has Wendy's contact info. So.
And I noticed there's a sentence that runs from the end of page 2 to the end of page 3 in the minutes that, as written, doesn't make any sense. So I'm guessing there was a typo or something in there that caused it to not be a grammatical sentence. So I'm not sure what the meaning of it was meant to be.
Wendy shared the project. Maybe just adding the word was. Wendy shared the project was already behind schedule, or schedule, yeah. Needs a little editing there.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes with those corrections.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Then we can move on to the Southeast Junior High Longfellow Tunnel 2023.
Yeah.
I only have one of the artists who designed them here today. The other one's at a cross-country meet.
Can you come up and speak in the mic
Oh,
so we can
sorry.
hear?
I only have one artist here today, but I'm Rachel Ayers-Arnone, teacher at Southeast Junior High, and then this is Grayson. And they designed the bottom one there. The other artist is not here. They're at a cross-country meet. Do you guys have any questions for Grayson about her work?
Do you mind sharing a little bit about it?
What do you want me to share specifically? Be specific.
So yours is the one on the bottom?
Yeah.
Where did you get your idea? What was your inspiration for this piece of art?
Well, there's this like D&D campaign I really like, and it's about pirates. So I was like, I'm gonna do something pirate themed because I like that campaign so much.
Do you play in the D&D club at Southeast?
I'm not good at D&D. It's just like a D&D podcast that I like.
Is it Ether C?
What?
No, never mind.
Yeah, so you'll have the whole class come out and help?
So what
Spray
we
painting
do
stuff.
is the entire class designed murals, okay? And then they voted. So these are the two that won. So these two artists automatically get to go on the trip. The Longfellow Tunnel is not big enough to have 30 kids in there at the same time. Nor do I want 30 kids with spray cans running around. So we take 10, and 10 is pretty manageable. Everyone has space to work and stuff like that. So the other 8 students will get picked out of a bucket. Whoever wants to go, their names go in, and then they get picked out. And we're looking at going the end of the month, so.
It's great. Do you guys have any other questions or comments? No?
And how it'll work, I see some new faces, but one of the murals will be on one side, and then one will be on the other, and then they will spill out either side. So the pirate scene will be able to just be continued out. Cole is talking about doing some smaller pieces on either side that are also similar to that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, we certainly appreciate the time you and the students put into this. It's been a really good project to keep that tunnel looking better than it had for a long time, and it's just been really nice. Thank you.
Well, we like doing it too.
Yeah, it's fun to walk through it and see it change each year. Yeah, I don't know. I guess we will need a motion to approve the artwork.
I make the motion to approve the artwork.
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye. All right, so moving on to considering the restoration of the 3 public artworks. Do you want to take us through?
Sure.
that?
So you had a kind of memo in your packet just as a little refresher as to what we were doing with this project. So in May, you had voted to allocate, I guess, the unallocated public art matching grant funds, which was almost $8,000 to an art maintenance funding line. At that time, I believe Wendy had identified these 3 projects, Birds in Flight along the Sycamore Greenway, One's Reality, which is at Riverside Drive and Highway 6, and then the wooden Kovalev sculptures, which are back in Willow Creek Park. Had identified those as probably in need of the most maintenance, and then engaged Dave Dennis, who is kind of an artwork services professional who's helped restore other public art pieces here in Iowa City. Dennis provided a proposal for each of these 3 pieces. I have those and can share more information. A summary was also attached in your agenda packet. But his cost estimates to do all 3 pieces total just over $18,000. Of course, you had only dedicated the $7,790. However, you do have unencumbered funds available if you wanted to do all 3. So if you were to do all 3, you would only need to tap into about $9,500 of those funds. So you'd still have a little wiggle room left over if another opportunity arose this year that you wanted to act upon. And then just a couple other things I'll say. So I did receive a letter, a visit, and a $1,000 donation from Jim Doorley. He is a private individual in the community who really loves the One's Reality piece and has just found a lot of joy in it over the years. And so he wanted to both express his gratitude to the committee for your time and attention to restoring this piece, and then also just show his commitment and his interest as a private individual with that $1,000 donation. And then I also received a call from Howard Horan, who was the son of Lee Dewey, who had donated one of the Kovalev sculptures that was commissioned by him and was at their family home for many years growing up. So he also wanted to call and just express support for restoration of the piece. Any questions?
So the question to us is whether we'd like to spend some of the funding that's not allocated for the year to do all 3?
That's correct. Yeah, so I didn't mention the timeline, but Dave kind of laid out, how he would tackle this, and he would be able to complete all 3 by next spring, which would be within the fiscal year, so.
And just to confirm, what, as far as the dollars that are unencumbered, that doesn't include, like, the money at the last meeting, we reallocated from?
Correct. So that wouldn't, so you kind of have your sculptor showcase, your matching grants, and then the big art projects that we're currently engaged in. So the Lucas Farms, South District, Airport Mural, and a couple others that maybe aren't started but had been identified. So that's just remaining funds. It's higher than you probably expected it to be because there were so many carryover from FY23.
So that doesn't encumber any of those projects that we're dedicated to already.
That's correct. It's just money that has not been discussed essentially yet.
And then the downside then of using that money for this would just be that it wouldn't be available then if there were some possible thing that we are not yet aware of but could become aware of in the future.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, obviously I'm fairly new, like what do we feel like the odds are that that money would potentially be needed for something else that might be more important potentially than this?
I don't think we've spent all our money in the time I've ever been on here, than a year, to be honest with you.
Excuse me.
So
I would say,
unlikely then.
you know, knowing the condition of these three pieces, I would vote that we do this because they are very much in need of repair before they get worse.
Yeah, especially the wood.
And it still leaves us with quite a bit of unencumbered funds. So we would still have over $1,500 and $15,000.
Right.
So
I agree.
it seems like this is definitely what we should do.
Well, and I think there's something really important about, we're usually commissioning or, I shouldn't say commissioning, but, funding new projects, and I think there's something that I like about, we're not just consuming or not abandoning, but also really, caring for what we have and, and stewarding.
And I was looking at some of the various, I mean, one's reality is one of the older items that is sort of under this committee's purview. I mean, that would show a commitment to that. I mean, I have memories of that thing back from when I was a young child, being there. So, but the plan is then to move that to the Roadworks Department building by Terry Trueblood. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, the new Public Works campus.
So I move to spend a portion of the unencumbered funds in the public art budget to complete the art maintenance project of these three pieces.
I'll second.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Excellent. Yeah, I agree. It's been in our plan, that we developed, and we've been talking about setting aside money for maintenance, so I'm really glad we're getting to do that. All right. Moving on to the update for the South District Bench Project.
Hello again.
Hello.
So Ian and I have been trying to work with various folks for the past couple of months or so, and in recent days we've found a lot more information, which is great. Our budget, so the last time I think Wendy had shared that the budget for the hand design was well over. That night, I thought I found a solution for it, but then when speaking with some more city officials and things like that, found out that there's some other things that we need to consider that would put it right back into being over budget again. And so I guess at this point, first of all, I just sort of want to say that, like, mea culpa as the mentor in this project, that I pushed Ethan to sort of like go beyond what just a bench is, and that really put the scope outside of the capabilities of the budget. And so I think that that's been a little bit frustrating for Ethan, unfortunately. And so, but I sort of wanted to let you all know that I guess with the most recent like numbers that we were kind of working around, I think Wendy had mentioned that it was probably in the 20,000s or whatever for the last hand design. Most recent one, it's still down, it's still above, but down to 18,000 and a half, give or take. So we keep on shaving things away or whatnot, but I feel like we're sort of at the third round of this, that we kind of need to move on to something else. And I had looked up numbers for the fallback design, the dominoes, and that was even more expensive than the hand design. So that's not necessarily a viable option. And since sort of like the top two out of the three designs that we kind of surveyed to the public, the South District and all that kind of stuff, since those are kind of out of the running just due to reality, right? I think it would behoove us to try to go back to the design process. We now know from the DOT what the clearance spaces from the road, from the 45 mile per hour. That leaves us with about 3 feet of depth to work with, which would allow for only a bench and absolutely nothing else. And so now that we know that constraint, as well as a variety of other things that we've talked with Ron and Julie and Rachel and Wendy when she was here and things like that, I think that we would be in a much better position to come up with some more constrained designs than what we originally proposed. And if we do that, then I would want us to put that back out into the public so that people can pick and choose of the new designs what they want to do. That's a quick summary. I'm sure there's questions.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Do you have a proposed timeline for those next steps?
Yeah, thank you. So in regards to like the design process itself, I feel like I guess I'll mention this as well, that I know that Ethan, unfortunately, isn't looking forward to my design process gauntlet again. And so I've asked him that, like, within this, the timeline, I think, would be about 2 months if we decide to move forward with sort of the design process. Depending on how Ethan feels, I've asked him to consider in the next few days what he would like to do or whatever. So if that's the case, then I think we can move on in a couple months, come back and have like a final design. Like if Ethan's still with us and everything like that, which I'm thinking he will be. But I just want to give him the option. Then we would have probably 3 concepts next month to show you all and let you know that these are the designs that we're going to show with the public. Then the following month, we would go with what the final chosen design would be. And that would still, so with the large designs that we had, we estimated about 12 to 16 weeks of fabrication time. If we, just to give sort of like an idea of context, that would put us into like about January, end of January, if we had approval today to do one of those, if we had the money and all that kind of stuff. And so even putting it back 2 months would be about March, and I don't think that the ground will be ready for anything, if the ground needs anything, until about like May-ish or so. So it still puts us within a good amount of time, I think, for installation season, but gives us a little bit of buffer and wiggle room as well. And I'm sorry, I don't have any slides for any of that.
That's okay. Any questions? Yeah, no, I appreciate your guys' persistence with it. It's not easy. So it's a pretty tight budget, so I appreciate the extra time you're taking to take another look at it.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're excited to see. I think, do we need to approve the proposed schedule, or is it just an update is okay?
Yeah, well, we'll probably need to make an amendment to the agreement that they have, so.
Okay, so we probably need a motion for that then.
Well, I would like to, I'll make that motion, but I also feel like, can we add a small amount of funding because of the?
I'd be open to that.
There's
We
some
have the-
responsibility on our part of not really
Setting
having
the
that
realistic-
information about egress, or I don't know, egress, whatever that.
Yeah, the constraints.
The constraints and whatnot, and I feel like effort, and I feel like even the setback is really, in some ways, it becomes part of the narrative of making public art, which is this back and forth kind of thing. But I do feel like, if we could even just give us, $1,000 for the mentor and the artist, or do something around those lines, or whatever amount the committee feels, or if our team would like to put forward, or would like to think about that and come with a proposal or something. I don't know.
I didn't know. I was under the impression we didn't have any unallocated funds, so this is kind of a pleasant surprise.
Right.
Because we have, what, like
you can totally
15,000?
Yeah.
That's, yeah.
I was gonna say, yeah, you could totally take time to discuss things. It's probably easier to discuss
I
without
agree,
us in the
that'd be
room.
Nice to, at least, yeah. What else are we gonna, we don't have another
Well,
plan
I think
for
it's
it.
a really great.
I do too.
Yeah.
Because right now the budget's 10.
Yeah, I'll help remind you. So $12,000 was originally budgeted in fiscal year '22. It's since been carried over. We've paid out 2,600 of that. Those were payments to the mentor and the artist for that first milestone, which was a selection of the artists. So there's 9,400 remaining in the project line right now.
So I think we should pay another mentoring and being mentored fee, right? So that each of them would get something for this extended, and kind of having to go back, having given 3 really good designs and presenting that to our committee.
And I feel like adding some to the actual project cost would be nice too.
Well, and that was going to be my follow-up question of, do the artist and mentor artists, would prefer, the sort of cash labor kind of aspect of that, or, fee towards, the manufacturing and the art object, or there's obviously both. I'm not throwing out, that it can't be,
I mean,
But I was just, but I mean, that's a discussion.
just going, feels like the elephant in the room to me. If we put another 8,000 in it, like the original design could be paid for almost, right? Like you said, it's not down to 18,000.
Right, yeah, and so let me also explain then, like, what the changes would be required in order to do that, is since we don't have space right at the bus stop there, then I feel really weird trying to explain this 3D spatial
bit
thing abstractly.
Farther back from the.
That's right.
So it's just.
Clearance, you need clearance.
We need clearance, right. So there's a bus stop and there's a bike path, and we'll have to go behind the bike path and probably to the left where there's less of an egress, because right behind, it's a fairly sharp egress. And so if we go off to the side, then it'll require some work with the city and everybody and things like that. And it'll require a new cement pad, and then Ron had also asked if we still had a structural engineer involved for the foundation work, which that's where I included $6,000 because that's what we were quoted for original structural engineer time for like the interior structure of the hand, which
The part that he figured it out, but he found a engine. No, it's a
jib
it's
crane.
for holding engines, right? But it holds up to 2,000 pounds. So. We have a-
I really feel like we all need another month to talk about this
Yeah, yeah.
and get some more clarification about what you think is possible.
Right.
And then come back with maybe a budget ask at that point, and maybe then we'll have a better feel for what's left in our budget and can have that kind of conversation about that.
Would you be able to put together a little bit of the budget for, like, now that you've spoken with DOT and have done, all of the crazy engineering stuff that has to go on, like a list of kind of those expenses? Or I just want to know, like, hey, here's what the project is going to be as is, and then, if you're like, well, if we do this other design, or any sort of alternative kind of numbers that you have as well, if that's possible, to just get check back in on scope of project, which then kind of helps, I think, with that budget discussion.
Right, totally.
And the redesigns that you're going to have to, some of the, it does sound like you'll have to kind of scale it back just for safety purposes.
Right, depending on where we put it, yes. Yep. Yeah, so
That,
I did not get the budget that Rachel had asked for right before this meeting in time, I'm guessing, so that you all weren't able to see that. But I do have that put together. It's got the line items like you're asking for and everything. So, yeah, I can get that. Do I need to send that to you?
Sure,
again?
yeah, you can send that to me. So for clarification from the committee, are we asking them to put together a revised budget and timeline based on the existing concept, or to develop a new?
Yes. Well, I think that's their conversation, but we want them to revisit if, what kind of additional funding and what you want to pursue given the new information.
I understand. Okay.
Because, sometimes things just, there's only, to a certain degree, you can redesign things
Yeah.
before it's like, we got an idea, let's just kind of rework this and figure something else out, given new information. And at the end of the day, you want to have something you're proud of, and you want to have something that the community loves. Those are tall orders.
Remember, one of the survey questions said, it sticks out, and I don't know if it was good or bad, but.
Well, yeah, I don't know.
And this is a question that you'll have to an answer you'll have to obviously tell me and tell me if it's too much. But, ideally, I would almost like to see, as a committee member, like, what is the budget as it stands with this, like, the community has voted on this piece. This would be ideal. But then if there is a way, as Anita said, like something that is more scaled back, if that's reasonable without saying, well, it's either this or this really crummy, like very
no.
mediocre, experience that would have to happen on this budget, because that's not fair to you all, or those who are going to be using the bus stop or the community and people passing by. But if there's a way to kind of have two versions, I guess, as part of the discussion for us with this, because it sort of went from there is nothing, there is no extra funding, to there is extra funding now that we have. I don't know, that could mean a lot of different things.
Right.
So I guess just having kind of the ideal, I guess, and the alternative might be helpful, at least for me. I
I agree.
I will just let you know that I have thought about like what an alternative would be at that location, and I think that just the actual concept of the design just doesn't work for the scope of the $10,000 budget. And it's mainly because of us playing with physics with that cantilever design and everything like that. It requires a lot more footing and stuff. And so even if we tried to get it back into that spot for the bench, I think there would still need to be a size, and I don't even know that we'd be able to do it because there's utility work underneath the ground there. But like, there's just, the reality doesn't lend itself for us to scale it down there, unfortunately. If we push it back or like put it somewhere else. Let me also say this, that I think, if I remember correctly, the South District, the SDNA, chose 7126 because they thought that, oh, we already have a cement pad here. That's not something that's going to encumber the project. I feel like if we wanted to go with something grand, that pad is out of the question. Oops. And so I may need to go back to SDNA and let them know about that, because I doubt that they knew about the speed zone clearance or anything like that. And then, because I think that they had another bus stop more centrally located in the South District that was also in question. And I guess I would feel remiss if I wouldn't let them know that, and just to, I guess, round back with everybody and make sure we're on the same page, if that makes sense. So
That's a good idea.
yeah. So I guess I like what you're saying for the alternatives, and it's just making me go down other avenues too.
So how do you feel about another month of
Yeah,
ideation?
gives me time to figure out what I'm gonna paint, or like the picture that's gonna go on it, because I'm trying to think of like what colors to use, like what design, like what
Right.
shapes. It gives me more time to think about that, so it's really what I want it to be. But that's what I've been doing, is making like patterns and things to just texture it.
But I think the question is, what about another month of like not going with the current hand design and
okay.
ideation for something to fit in the space?
Yeah.
Is that right, the question?
Well, it just, we're just figuring out, I mean, if the design as it was is just really not feasible given the locations, do you want to go with a redesign or a new design regarding that,
It'll
I
be
guess?
time to do that too. But
Okay. Well, thank you all.
So are you guys okay with taking this next month to basically revisit the budget, even the potential location?
Yep.
with South District and kind of come back to us are we meeting next month? That's
Sure
future
can,
agenda.
yeah.
When we meet next month with basically kind of outlining, here's the budget of what we think would work, and if it's a little bit more, this is our ask. Does that sound good?
That sounds reasonable.
Upward if he's upward.
Yeah.
I mean, because it kind of really depends. There's, if this, then this is going to be, you know, a request. If it's this, then that's a different kind of request.
Yeah.
And a little bit of a different consideration. So having both of those would be, you know, I would greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't envy you all with this extra amount of money and trying to pick and choose and decide
I don't
what it's gonna
envy
be.
your problem. It's probably a
You have
great
the harder-
problem. I will
harder,
say that art benefits from these
It
processes,
does.
you know,
Yeah,
from
that's a
great
bumping
point.
up and having some restraints. It kind of makes you think differently. And I do think having a budget, you know, and maybe the budget, you know, because of costs increase and like everything's not so great, but I always know my work is better sometimes when I really got to like
Bear down and really figure it
yeah,
out.
figure it out and fix it. And, you know, whereas if it was just,
Infinite
it
budget.
would, you know, I would just be like, you know, my ADHD would kick in and I'd just be buying stuff. I
But
don't know.
I think
a
this
good point.
has been really interesting for me as a committee member to consider just the COVID effects and inflation and just like having to have that conversation over multiple years of the cost of production and materials has gone up. Therefore, I think that's always something that we have to keep in mind as well with budget.
And we've seen a
And-
jump in a year and a
Yeah.
half of about 6%, so.
Right.
So you might even be going back with these numbers and not be happily surprised.
Right. Cool.
Yeah.
These are things to think about. And then in light of that, you know, I don't want to be cavalier with this
Sure.
funding because I think this might become a story that we're going to see on all our existing projects
Yeah,
as we move forward.
that's a good point.
So I think, I mean, I really do think it's a learning process also, just
It is.
given new things for us. So I'm, you know, happy and grateful that you all are willing to work with us on this and have these conversations and have it be a back and forth. And it is taking more time, but I mean, again, I think there's real value in that.
Good, good. I was feeling bad that it was dragging out, so.
I think it's the nature. I just think that kind of happens, you know? I mean, you know, and this is like a smaller project and you have a lot of control, but you know, like when you're an artist and you're doing a public piece in a building, like, and you got to wait for that building to get built.
Right.
It just happens, you know?
Yeah.
There's time things, yeah.
Well, thank you all for your time.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
That brings us to staff updates.
Okay, we're on to staff updates. So first up, just an update on the Black Park Mini Park project, which you all had voted last month to terminate that agreement. There was a 30-day curing period required in order to terminate, and the letter was issued on August 11th. So assuming it's not resolved in the next few days, September 11th, that agreement will officially be terminated, and then that balance of just over $5,000 will go to the Lucas Farms project. So then related for the Lucas Farms project update, that brings that total to around $17,000. Draft, about 90% draft of a request for qualifications is complete. That would still need to be reviewed by the city attorney's office. Judy Iron of the Lucas Farms neighborhood provided me some history to include in that per your request that would help the respondents gain some inspiration based on their vision. And she will also be providing me specific guidance from the Neighborhood Association about what they're looking for if there's anything like that. She just wasn't able to call a meeting of the neighborhood together that quickly. So we did talk, in their goal will be to create a landmark piece in Highland Park. And then, you know, remember she had kind of a vision of how it would expand throughout the neighborhood. But for this project, we could focus on that. And then perhaps through future fundraising, they could expand upon their vision. Any questions about those two updates or others?
So will you have a draft of that RFQ then for next month?
Ideally, it will depend on if Lucas Farms Neighborhood's able to meet and get me their guidance, but that's the plan right now.
Awesome.
That probably RFQ process, I would say, from posting to award would take 2 months. So whether it happens in October or November, I think we're still good for a spring installation or summer, early summer.
Makes sense.
Otherwise, then, so it sounds like we want to stick with the October meeting. We'll have for sure the Lucas Farms RFQ, hopefully, and then the South District bench project update. So I will not be present, but we'll make sure we have someone from staff to lead.
Is there something that could just be done asynchronously, like getting that update from the South District bench? I mean, it definitely doesn't seem worth it to have a meeting just for the Lucas Farms RFQ, if that might not even happen anyways. But the keeping momentum with the South District bench seems great. I just don't know if we need a whole meeting just for, if that's the only thing on the agenda and you're gone.
I do think at some point we should probably have a vote to amend the agreement with them.
Okay.
And then to probably approve the RFQ that goes out. I suppose that can happen in November if you prefer not to meet in October.
I mean, I was going to say, I know that if you have enough, like, email correspondence or replies, all it has to go into the public record. I mean, that seems, like, emailing seems messy, but I am wondering if some of that could be
Or we
done.
can have a small committee meet with
That
them
almost
to
seems more
iron.
productive.
Yeah, to iron things out and have it come
Subcommittee.
back to the full group in November.
Sure.
That's a smart idea.
Yeah.
We want to form a subcommittee to work with them.
Volunteers.
Should be able to.
I can do that.
Yeah,
too,
you definitely should.
Does, I mean, do we need
Anyone else?
2 or 3?
Andrew and Anina?
Happy to join as well, but do you?
Okay, well, we'll go with that, and I can help coordinate with Ray and Ethan to set up a time to meet.
I mean, that also just feels better for you since this is, like, new for you being solo with PAC. It just seems like not having to deal with having someone else and just
Okay. Well, I
off might be
appreciate it.
nice. I don't know.
I was feeling like a little work session was necessary anyways with those guys.
Okay.
With those guys.
Perfect. Okay.
So
That would be more productive.
I think it would be really helpful to just get in a room and kind
Yeah.
of talk through it.
Great idea. Okay.
If that's okay with you guys.
I agree.
Yep. And I'll keep things moving with Judy as well, and if move as quickly as we can, and we can get that out in November.
Okay,
Awesome.
cool. Then.
I missed
that's-
older new business on the agenda, so you'll have to.
I don't think we have any.
Yeah, I don't think we do. Yeah, Ron's not here, so.
You're on.
Motion for adjournment.
Second.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.